What if I told you there's a single blueprint for, well, for everything? A universal architecture that could explain how a galaxy forms, how your immune system works, and maybe even how your own consciousness boots up every single moment. Today, we're diving into a really bold new theory that says exactly that. All right, let's get into it.
So let's start with the problem that's been bugging scientists for ages. We've got physics to explain the universe, biology to explain life, and psychology to explain the mind. And they're all amazing, but they all speak different languages. They're describing the same reality with totally different rulebooks.
And that's the big question, right? If it's all one universe, shouldn't there be one underlying logic? Some kind of Rosetta Stone for reality itself. It's this huge gap in our understanding that we've been trying to bridge forever. Well, this new framework, called Cyclus BIOS, it has an answer. And it proposes that maybe it's not a language problem at all. Maybe it's an architecture problem. That deep down, under all the complexity we see, there's a single, super elegant three-part system running the whole show, everywhere. So, what is this elegant solution? It uses three concepts you've probably heard of from computers, but it applies them in a totally radical new way to, the fabric of reality itself. Let's break down these three layers: ROM, RAM, and the all-important BIOS. Okay, first up, you've got ROM, or read-only memory. Think of this as the permanent, unchangeable blueprint. It's the set of rules that decides what's even possible in a system. It's like the laws of physics or the deep grammatical rules hardwired into our DNA. They don't change, they just are. Next, there's RAM, or random access memory. Now, if ROM is the blueprint, RAM is what's happening right now. It's the temporary state of things, your thoughts, a fleeting memory, the exact position of particles in this very moment. It's supposed to be volatile and changeable. That's its job. And this is the secret sauce. What connects the permanent rules of ROM to the temporary reality of RAM? That's the BIOS. It's the engine, the ignition key. It is a constant, cyclical process that reads the permanent rules to create or initialize the present moment. This means reality isn't static. It's being rebooted over and over and over. And here is where we get to the theory's most mind-bending claim. The author, E. Kuhn, is very clear about this. This whole ROM-RAM BIOS thing, it's not just a nice metaphor. It's meant to be a literal description of how the universe, life, and consciousness actually work. Okay, so if this is a universal mechanic, it has to apply at the biggest scale we can think of, right? So let's zoom out. Let's go to the scale of the cosmos and see if this crazy idea actually holds up. Well, according to this theory, the universe has a very clear ROM. That gigantic network of galactic filaments we call the cosmic web, that's like the visible ROM, a permanent scaffolding that tells matter where it's allowed to form. And underneath that, the invisible architecture of dark matter, creating these huge structures like the local sheet, that's an even deeper geometric ROM that governs how space itself expands. This idea goes so deep it starts to reframe our most basic assumptions. I love this quote: "Mass is not given but written." What does that mean? It means, in this view, a fundamental property like mass isn't just a static given. It's actively written into existence, moment by moment, by a BIOS process that's reading the deeper rules from the universe's ROM. Okay, so the theory seems to work out there in the stars. But what about life? What about us? Does the exact same architecture show up inside our own bodies? Let's scale down from the cosmic to the biological. And what's amazing is the pattern holds. Our bodies are just filled with these active BIOS writers. Your immune system, for instance, has a small fixed library of gene segments, that's its ROM, and it uses that to write a nearly infinite variety of antibodies, the RAM, to fight off whatever's coming at you. Or telomerase, which acts as a BIOS writer for our chromosomes, basically maintaining our cellular clock, a deep biological ROM. Thinking this way also gives us a profoundly new way to look at disease. Alzheimer's, for example, is no longer seen as a disease where your memory storage, your RAM, is failing. Instead, it's understood as a BIOS collapse, a failure in the brain's ability to initialize its reality from one moment to the next. You can start to see how this could apply to other things too, like trauma or even chronic illness. This perfectly explains why something like music can be so incredibly powerful for people with advanced dementia. The quote really says it all. Music is older than the memory. While the RAM, the day-to-day episodic memory, might be failing, music can act as a powerful BIOS trigger. It can access that deep, procedural, emotional ROM that is still perfectly intact.
And all of this leads us to the theory's most compassionate and, frankly, practical application, a completely new way of thinking about and providing care for people living with dementia.
And this slide really lays out the difference. The traditional approach tries to fix the broken RAM, correcting someone's memory, trying to reorient them to a reality they just can't access anymore. But the Cyclus BIOS approach says don't do that. It accepts that the RAM has failed and instead focuses on reinitializing the system from that intact deep self, the ROM.
So how does that actually work? Well, the caregiver essentially becomes a kind of external BIOS. First, they work to connect with a person's core self, their ROM. Then they create a safe space by validating the person's reality instead of correcting it, something they call radical normalization. And finally, they act as the BIOS trigger, using things like music or touch or just a calm presence to help that person's system reboot from its stable inner core.
This is it. This is the key takeaway. The shift in thinking that could change everything. It's not about trying to repair what's broken. It's about helping to restart what is still whole. Not repairing, reinitializing.
And that really leaves us with one last big thought. If this theory is right, if reality isn't some continuous movie, but a series of moments, each one freshly booted from a deeper set of rules, well, it turns the question back on all of us, doesn't it? What reality are you initializing in the very next moment?